40 years ago, a giant comet collided with the Earth, causing continents to sink into the sea. As a consequence, the Korean Peninsula has become a barren landscape with polluted air. The place, however, is survivable because of technological advances, especially a massive engine called air core that was designed to convert oxyanium to oxygen. The survivors, who account for less than 1% of the entire previous population, have been organized into a new social order. The population is divided into 3 districts: the general district made up of everyday people, the special section made of middle-class working people, and finally the core section made up of the elites. All 3 sections of people have QR codes ingrained on their fists, which they use to pay for oxygen as well as food supply. The remaining population without QR codes are left to adapt to life without any help and are termed as refugees. Several essential goods like oxygen, food, and other necessities are transported from one place to another by specially trained personnel called deliverymen. However, some refugees eventually grow tired of all the discrimination and resort to forming groups called hunters that steal the supplies while they are being transported. Hence, the job of being a deliveryman comes with a huge risk of death. But, for the refugees, being a deliveryman is also the only way to climb the social ladder, as these trained personnel are given QR codes equivalent to being a member of the general section. The most famous among the delivery men is 5-8, who is known for his ruthless strength and efficient working manner. Meanwhile, at one of the refugee shelters in Gangnam, a young man named Yoon Sawal stands across a group of people, ready to take them all at once. Sawal is a refugee without a code and wants to become a delivery man so that he can officially become a citizen. He continues to practice physical combat almost every day to be elected as one. As a part of his self-regimented practice, he is currently facing a group of unknown attackers. While his friends, named Useless, Dummy, and Dum Dum, watch from inside a vehicle, Sawal takes off his purifying mask and charges towards the attackers. His fighting style is chaotic, oftentimes relying on luck, but he manages to beat all the attackers by himself. Elsewhere, delivery man 5-8 delivers oxygen to a customer's house that lies in the general section. After delivering an oxygen cylinder, he has a small conversation with the owner of the house. However, their conversation is interrupted when 5-8 gets a message. The text reads that one of the new deliverymen is currently being robbed by hunters near Gangnam refugee camp. Hence, he immediately leaves for the crime scene. In the meantime, a group of rowdy hunters has cornered a supply truck. After subduing the driver and looting the supplies, they begin to leave before reinforcement can arrive. However, one of the hunters sees the QR code on the left fist of the deliveryman and hatches a cruel plan. They want to chop his hand so that they can take the QR code and enjoy the perks that come with it. Fortunately, 5-8 arrives at the spot just in the nick of time. He immediately beats all of them one by one. The legendary delivery man then points his gun at the leader of the hunters, but does not kill him. After warning that the next time he won't hesitate to shoot, 5-8 leaves the scene with the newbie deliveryman. That night, in the general district, Sawal sneaks past the patrolling guards. He hides his fist so that they cannot detect him being a refugee. Soon afterwards, he sees a kid who is being dragged out into a police vehicle. It is then revealed that one of the residents of the general district was sheltering a refugee kid, because of which both the kid and the resident are being punished. This is bad news for Major Seol-ah of the Defense Intelligence Command, since she's personally and secretly taking care of Sawal, a refugee. He has been staying with Seol-ah for a decade and is very close to her younger sister, Jeong. After Sawal expertly sneaks into his home through the filtration system, he is immediately caught by Major Seol-ah. She is extremely worried about him attracting attention through his deliveryman training. It is also revealed that Seol-ah has been trying to secure Sawal a QR code through official channels for a decade now. However, she has not come any closer to achieving that. In the meantime, Sawal sneaking out of the general district gets him a 15-day grounding from Major Seol-ah. In the meantime, 5-8 gets an anonymous message asking him to be at Gate 8 of the general district at 5 p.m. that evening. In the next scene, Raya Seok, the heir to the Chinyeong group who has become wealthy and powerful by controlling oxygen sales, makes his way into the core district. Unlike other districts, the core district is magnificent, filled with green plants and abundant sunlight. Meanwhile, his father and the CEO of Chinyeong, Raya Yi-jin, holds a meeting with the president of Korea. The two discuss relocating the special district to a new place called District Asun. Raya Seok joins the meeting, and it immediately becomes clear that he does not like the government meddling in their business. After she leaves, he expresses his displeasure with the government to his father, but Chairman Yi-jin reminds him not to antagonize the government. and to focus on his work properly. While on the other hand, Sawal ignores Major Seol-ah's words about staying indoors. Instead, he once again ventures outside the district with 3 of his friends to rob a supply truck. It turns out that the truck they plan to rob is being driven by the famous deliveryman 5-8. Soon Sawal and his friends manage to get on top of the truck. Inside, 5-8 sees this through a security camera and immediately starts maneuvering the truck left and right. As a result, the Sawal's friends are pushed towards the edge of the truck, barely hanging on. As Sawal continues to make his way towards the driver's cabin, 5-8 activates the vehicle's electric voltage security system. This shocks the kids who are hanging by the side of the truck and they fall down. However, Sawal manages to enter the driver's cabin where he comes face to face with a stoic 5-8. Bolstered, the young Sawal challenges the legendary deliveryman to a fight. But their confrontation ends unceremoniously when 5-8 simply pushes Sawal out of the truck. The young kid realizes just how strong his opponent is. Following this, 5-8 manages to drive through a massive sandstorm to arrive at Gate 8, as the anonymous message suggested. There, he sees the Air Corps being transported into District A. At the same time, Major Seol-ah is also present there. After feeling something shady is going on at the construction site, she demands to see the head of security of the Chunyong group. However, Ryu-seok flat out refuses to let her enter, and she has no option but to turn back empty-handed. On the way back, Major Seol-ah's convoy stops because their way is blocked by a truck. Upon inspection, it turns out that the truck belongs to 5-8, who was earlier spying around Gate 8. As he did not meet the informant who sent him the message, 5-8 plans to return back, and Major Seol-ah also lets him go after a routine checkup. Meanwhile, Sawal finally returns home. Jeong is very angry at him for once again violating Jeong's orders, so she traps him in his room and immediately locks him up using her QR code. On the other side, 5-8 visits the refugee district with a couple of other undercover delivery men. There, he meets a young kid on the brink of being unconscious thanks to a lack of oxygen. 5-8 immediately tops up his oxygen supply and has a conversation with the kid. He and his colleagues then distribute fresh oxygen, along with food to refugees in desperate need. They also check up on a pregnant refugee for medical follow-up and even change the bulb in their home. It is quite obvious that 5-8 and his colleagues regularly visit the refugees, for which they are immensely respected. Following this, 5-8 meets with the leader of the hunter party that he fought against a few days ago. It turns out that the two have immense respect for each other and are working together on a secret mission to delay the construction of District A. 5-8 tells the leader about the anonymous message he got. He also adds that the person who sent him the message was nowhere to be found. However, he did see the aircon being moved to District A, which means their plan faced a setback for the moment. The next day, 5-8 gets back to work, delivering oxygen cylinders to the general district. This time, he visits Major Seol-ah's house where only her sister Jeong and Sawal are present. Since Sawal is locked up, Jeong receives the cylinders. As she realizes that it is the legendary 5-8 delivering her order, she freaks out and asks to take a selfie with him. Shortly after 5-8 leaves, a group of unknown masked and armed men break into Major Seol-ah's house. It isn't clear what the attackers want, but once inside the house, they pin Jeong down and try to inject her with something, implying they are kidnapping her. Fortunately, Sawal is able to burst out of the room and fight them off, shooting a couple of attackers dead. However, Jeong is fatally shot in the crossfire. Just as Sawal comes to terms with Jeong being shot, someone comes up behind him and shoots him on the back of his head. Outside, Knight 58 hears the gunshots and immediately rushes back into the home to check on the situation. The attacker who shot Sawal in the head is still alive and tries to ambush the incoming 5-8, but the deliveryman is too quick for him and shoots the attacker dead. 5-8 then moves further in and is surprised to see a gruesome murder scene with several victims. He also finds out that this house belongs to Major Seol-ah and her sister Jeong through a family photo. Unfortunately, Jeong had become a victim of this murder. While checking the corpses, 5-8 finds tattoos on a killer's body depicting two triangles placed on top of one another. However, he still doesn't know what their motive for committing the murder was. 5-8 then sees the unconscious body of Sawal lying in the puddle of his own blood. He immediately remembers the kid, one who had ever challenged him to a fight a few days ago. The delivery man calls in the police and is about to leave when he notices Sawal twitching his hand, indicating that he is still alive. So, 5-8 immediately takes him in his truck while calling for his colleague, 4-1, who was earlier checking the pregnant woman in the refugee camp. That afternoon, Major Jeong comes to know about the invasion and subsequent murder in her house, so she immediately arrives there. Inside, she cries upon seeing her younger sister lying lifeless. Then, she orders her junior, Sergeant Lee, to investigate this case and find out who's the culprit. They then map the whole house and make a digital map of every activity that took place there. Meanwhile, Sawal, who had been shot in the head, is miraculously alive as if nothing had happened. Deliveryman Formanus 1, who has expertise in the medical field, then explains that Sawal is insensitive to bullets. 5-8, who had previously heard rumors of such a person, is clearly shocked seeing it firsthand. Moreover, he sees a gash near Sawal's left ankle. When he peeks in closer, he sees that Sawal's bones are shiny and metallic, almost like they were made of titanium. He speculates that maybe this is why Sawal is immune to bullets. The next day, Major Jeong goes to the house of a man named Grandpa who is a local level mechanic. Sawal frequently visited Grandpa and his house with his friends, Useless, Dummy, and Dum Dum. There she briefs Grandpa about the recent incident and asks him to help her locate Sawal. After the old man courteously promises to do so, she leaves. The next day, 5-8 is called to the special district to meet with Major Seol Ah. He is to be interrogated for an internal investigation by the army because he made the emergency call right before the invasion, and murder happened. There, he explains the chronology of events that happened on the day, and links this case to the widespread kidnappings that are currently widespread in the general district. After a bit of argument with the major, 5-8 leaves for his job. That night when Seol Ah returns home, she is taken aback by someone's voice. It turns out to be Sawal, who is crying in his room. He apologizes to her and reveals that he does not remember a single thing about the incident at all. In the end, Major Seol Ah gives him a necklace and allows him to leave to go to live with his friends and Grandpa. Then, the scene shifts to 9 years ago. At that time, Major Seol Ah along with several other military personnel were quashing a refugee uprising against the Chinyoung group. Seol Ah, who still had a kind heart and could not stomach the unnecessary violence, secretly saved a young Sawal who was lying hurt under a mattress. Back in the present day, Sawal instead goes to meet the other refugee hunter group with whom he fought a few weeks ago. Frustrated with his life, he asks them to beat him to a pulp or just finish him off. His 3 friends, who fortunately see this, then try to help by intervening in the beating that Sawal is getting. Fortunately, they succeed in saving him. However, just before they can drag him out of danger, one of the hunters slams a metal bat against the back of Sawal's head, causing him to fall unconscious. Meanwhile, Deliveryman 5-8 starts investigating the several kidnapping incidents himself. He tracks down people kidnapping teenagers from the streets using a GPS tracker. That night, he and his colleagues move into the kidnapper's place and find out that they have kidnapped several teenagers. These teenagers are used as experimental subjects in a laboratory. Meanwhile, Sawal's condition has now improved but still feels guilty because he could not save Jeong. On the other hand, Deliveryman 5-7, who was supposed to be on duty with 5-8 during the day of Jeong's murder, visits Ryu Seok in the core district. There, he says he cannot do Ryu Seok's bidding any longer because he feels mentally tortured by the consequences of his actions. It turns out that Deliveryman 5-7 is the perpetrator behind the several kidnappings in the general district on behalf of Ryu Seok. He did this because he was promised permanent residency in the core district for life. However, 5-7 is also forced to carry on doing Ryu Seok's bidding as the evil businessman has planted a chip on the back of 5-7 Second's head. This device is a remote-controlled explosive that can be detonated anytime Ryu Seok wants. Following this, Ryu Seok meets his father to talk about the recent development of their project. From their conversation, it is clear that his father does not trust Ryu Seok to lead the company because their visions are wildly different. While Chairman Yi Jin wants to improve lowly people's lives, Ryu Seok has no problem killing refugees without identity because he thinks they do not add anything to the world while consuming a lot of resources. Elsewhere, 5-8 meets Grandpa and tells him that Sawal is immune to bullets. Hearing this, Grandpa then reveals Sawal's family origin. It turns out his father was a miner and lived in a place filled with radioactive materials. Probably that's why he was born as a mutant with such abilities. The next day, at a goods delivery station, 5-8 sees 5-7 about to commit suicide. He quickly stops his colleague from carrying out such a stupid act and has a conversation with 5-7. Apparently, 5-8 already knew that the recent kidnappings had been carried out by 5-7, so he immediately interrogates 5-7. Flustered, 5-7 hurriedly reveals that the kidnapped people are being used as experimental subjects. But before he can reveal the mastermind behind all this, an implant in his head suddenly goes off and destroys his nervous system, killing him instantly. This was of course done by Ryu Seok, who did not want his crime to be exposed. Following this, because of the disappearance of an important delivery man like 5-7, Rye Seok announces that he will open recruitment for a new delivery man to anyone willing to fill up the post. The news finally reaches Sawal, who really wants to be a delivery man. The scene then shifts to an unspecified time in the past where 5-8 battles Chinyong soldiers trying to get rid of several refugees. He even manages to kill several of the attackers. However, just when he thought the conflict was averted, he is shot down by 2 soldiers. All the refugees who died in the incident along with 5-8 are sent somewhere to be burned. However, 5-8 manages to survive and kills the remaining soldiers. It is obvious that 5-8 is playing a long game to take down the Chinyong group and sees something of himself in Sawal. Back in the present, Sawal blocks 5-8 truck and immediately shows the recruitment letter once he disembarks his vehicle. Sawal admits 5-8 greatness and then begs the deliveryman to train him. Even though at first he refuses, 5-8 eventually agrees to train Sawal. He then gives the young boy an address and asks him to meet there the following day. Following this, 5-8 secretly has a meeting with 10 other colleagues in the old deliveryman training center. All of these deliverymen used to be refugees who disliked the Chinyong group. On the other hand, Major Seol-ah receives a report that 5-8 movements look suspicious. Knowing this, she and a group of her soldiers immediately move to the given location. Meanwhile, 5-8 reveals to his colleagues the Chinyong group is behind the kidnappings of children of former Oxyanium miners. From their discussion, it is revealed that the mutation that Sawal has causes metal bones and extremely fast healing from injury. But when they are in the middle of this discussion, Major Seol-ah and her team arrive to ambush them. Strangely, when they go in, he only sees the delivery men in the middle of training. On the other hand, 5-8 uses this moment to finally have a one-on-one talk with Major Seol-ah. He tells her how deliveryman 5-7 was killed by an implant device that exploded in the back of his head. He then gives her the double triangle symbol drawn on a piece of paper and explains that the symbol is exactly the same as the tattoo of the group that carried out the murder at her house. He also says that their motive was to kidnap young Jiang along with other young children in the area. Hearing all this, Major Seol-ah orders her team to find people with the double triangle symbol. The following day, Major Seol-ah is called to meet Raya Seok, who plans to relocate the people from the general district to district. To do that, he wants to see the database containing information about the people in all zones. However, the data is confidential, so Major Seol-ah immediately refuses his request. Unbeknownst to her, Raya Seok wants the relocation program to be carried out by his father's company so he can commit his heinous plan of mass murdering poor people under the pretext of planning and relocation. Meanwhile, Sawal finally arrives at the training center for the deliverymen, where 5-8 is already waiting for him. There, he is taught to fight and see the enemy's movement quickly. Shortly after the training is over, Sawal registers his name. Finally, after years of trying, he manages to get an identity card with his name. Motivated by this, he continues training really hard. A few days later, the selection process to become a deliveryman starts. In the first round, the contestants are tested for their speed and Sawal runs to the first position. He is then asked to fight with low oxygen levels. In the end, he manages to win the first round without much problem. In the second round, the contestants are asked to deliver a package in trucks. On their way, they have to fight the hunters who will not hesitate to kill them. Raya Seok along with 5-8 is also present to see the selection. In this round, not only Sawal fights fearlessly, but he also helps his rival against the hunters as best as he can. He fights to the end and makes it to the finish line with one of the contestants he helped. Strangely, even though he reached the finish line, Sawal is disqualified, and the one entitled to go to the next round is the rival he helped earlier. However, the contestant who advanced to the final round can't continue because of a broken arm. The deliverymen, led by a very stressed 5-8, vote to reinstate Sawal in order to give some hope to the refugees. Raya Seok, thinking the narrative will make the implementation of his plans to relocate the refugees easier, agrees to it. Unbeknownst to anyone, Raya Seok is trying to create a mass exodus of refugees. He plans to relocate only selected residents to his newly built district based on private personal information and biodata. He wants to establish a new world with hand-picked, genetically advantaged citizens, and he wants Seol-ah and the Defense Intelligence Command to help him do it. However, he knows of her moral opposition to the plan. On the other hand, his well-meaning father is also not informed about this plan. While Seol-ah continues trying to investigate the men with triangle tattoos after 5-8 tip off, 5-8 and his team blow up a generating unit heading for district. On the other hand, Sawal enters the next round of the tournament. He's given some temporary lodgings and a mentor, who turns out to be 4-1. that nobody knows of their pre-existing relationship. The duo prepare Sawol to fight another finalist, Ju Jeong-nam. The fight will take place in the core district, where the air is breathable. It will also be broadcast live everywhere else. Just as Ryu Seok planned, this will entice out mass numbers of refugees through promises of food and compressed oxygen simply for their attendance. Sawol and Jeong-nam are to have essentially an MMA fight with 5-minute rounds that only ends with a knockout. The following scenes then hop between the final of the tournament and 5-8 uncovering Ryu Seok's evil plan out in the districts. When 5-8 is ambushed by some of the men with triangle tattoos, he takes them all down. However, he keeps one alive, quickly cutting the explosive device from the back of his neck so he can't commit suicide. Looking through his phone, he pulls up all the information about the refugee relocation plan and the scheme to lure the refugees out in masses by live streaming the tournament finale. Meanwhile, after a hard fight, Sawol wins the tournament, but his victory is short-lived. After receiving a whooping in the early rounds, a nasty cut is opened on his forehead which reveals his metal skull beneath. The curious Ryu Seok spots it while Sawol is celebrating. In the final scene, 5-8 races into the districts, but doesn't make it in time. When Sawol is announced the winner, bombs go off in the various clusters of refugees, killing the vast majority of the population. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.